This is CBC Vancouver News.
It's been 17 days and counting, but now
I was like so happy to be home.
What we're doing is putting it all back in place and moving on.
thousands of Fort Nelson evacuees are returning home with the first look at the land scorched by flames. Plus, cutting down screen time in schools.
I think overwhelmingly parents definitely want some restrictions.
A debate tonight at the Vancouver School Board on whether to restrict cell phones for students in kindergarten to grade 6. Also, cut your emissions or face fines.
It's not something that you could rush.
We see lots of progress being made in 3-year timeframes.
Not everyone is going to be able to afford to do that.
Vancouver becomes the first city in Canada to cap emissions on large retail and office buildings, but the new bylaw doesn't come without challenges. Hello, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. It is a moment more than 2 weeks in the making. Thousands of Fort Nelson evacuees have started returning home after being forced out by flames 17 days ago. But as those residents return, many are acutely aware that the wildfire threat is far from over this season. Karen Larson has our top story tonight.
What we're doing is putting it all back in place and moving on.
For this Fort Nelson retiree, there's no place like home.
And my wife said coming across the bridge, she had tears in her eyes because she knows it's still here, eh? Look at this grass I got to mow now, see?
Chores aplenty await 4,700 locals who were forced to evacuate 2.5 weeks ago when high winds pushed wildfire to the edge of town. Salmon's house and birdhouses survived, but 4 homes were destroyed and about a dozen properties damaged.
Well, I guess I can say that it's a heck of a relief to still have a home to come back to. And that's the key thing. I know some people don't, and our heart goes out to them and the whole community.
I think everybody was really happy that we made the call for everybody to come home.
The mayor says although wildfire is no longer an imminent threat to the town, things could backtrack quickly.
So if we end up with a hot, dry spell and then we get some wind, we could be in the exact same situation as we are now. So the intent is to get the community together in the next couple of weeks, talk about their experience, talk about learnings that they've all had, so that we can dovetail all of that experience and understanding into our plans to make them better, just in case there is another time.
But for most, Monday was a day to restore some semblance of normal life.
Yesterday, we just last minute, they told us we could open up, so we were in a rush, and by 4:30 the store was up and running.
And for those making the trek home, a welcome wagon of sorts, staged by who else? The fire department.
I'm actually in the clothes I was evacuated in, so I was so happy to be home. Fort Nelson is just amazing, and I love my community. I love what they've done.
An evacuation alert remains in place in the area, meaning people need to be ready to leave on short notice. Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
From fires in the north to earlier floods in the south, a new dike and drainage system is coming to a problematic flood-prone area of Grand Forks. 1/3 of the city's 4,000 residents had to leave their homes due to devastating floods in 2018. Following years of criticism and calls for more government help, the province is now announcing a 700-meter dike and 500-meter drainage system. It's designed to protect a 100-home neighborhood and industrial area. An Abbotsford woman who has been displaced by disaster twice is calling for more help for those who've lost a home. Danielle Rayner lost one home to the floods in 2021, then another to a massive fire 6 months later. As Moira Whiten reports, one expert says mental health impacts can linger long after an emergency.
I was screaming at people to get out of the building.
Danielle Rayner says she lost everything in the massive blaze 2 years ago, including one of her beloved cats, Jack.
And I was trying to talk to the people on 911, as well as I did try and go back up for my cats, but you couldn't. It was an impossibility to do that and make sure that I got as many people out of the building as I could. Still to this day, I smell smoke, I panic. I hear a fire engine, I panic. I have dreams that Jack is meowing for me and I couldn't get to him.
It was Rayner's second home destroyed by disaster in just 6 months, shattering her finances, physical health, and her mental well-being.
That's like, what I want people to know, that it's not just a building that was burned down. It's not just people that, oh, well, they were displaced for a little bit. It's not that. It's my brain and my heart feel like displaced.
One expert says she's just one of many, with tens of thousands in BC grappling with similar struggles. As climate disasters intensify, more people are displaced, and challenges last long after they return home.
We cannot leave the mental health impacts out of the equation when it comes to disasters like wildfires and other things like that, but also that more and more people are signaling that they're experiencing mental health impacts related to climate change writ large.
BC's emergency ministry says psychological support teams are deployed to affected communities and strongly encourage renters to have tenants insurance. Meanwhile, Rayner is among more than 20 ex-residents suing former neighbors and others over the fire. She says it's been a long struggle to get the housing and mental health supports she needs.
People didn't, have the expertise in that, or there's not enough therapists. Like, we need to have that. We need to have more affordable housing. 100% need to have more affordable housing. Because since then, I'm paying a lot more for rent and bills. And I don't feel as secure.
As you can see behind me, the condos have been rebuilt in the time since the first lawsuits were filed. But for Rayner, she says that the damage of the fire still runs much deeper. Moira Whiten, CBC News, Abbotsford.
Close to 8 square kilometers of forested land in West Vancouver will be turned into a protected park. It'll be almost twice the size of Stanley Park, nestled along West Vancouver's mountainside known as the Upperlands.
It sets the backdrop for our entire metropolitan region, and we're sending a message to everybody that we care about the environment, we care about the backdrop to our city.
And the process to name the park will be decided still by West Vancouver Council. In Vancouver, commercial real estate owners are being told to cut emissions or else face hefty fines. It's a new city bylaw that's the first of its kind in Canada and targets large retail and office buildings. Owners have to start tracking and submitting their emissions starting this week. And while many are on board with the retrofits needed, they say it won't come easy.
And as we kind of move over here, you'll see a lot more of that piping that we saw.
Jesse Gregson shows us a narrow mechanical room filled with pipes all connecting a new heat recovery system. His real estate company is upgrading 2 buildings to meet Vancouver's new bylaw, including the biggest mall in the city.
In this building particularly, we're targeting a 50% steam reduction, which equates to almost 50% reduction in emissions for the building.
In Vancouver, more than half of all carbon pollution vents from buildings. The cap on emissions will now apply to roughly 200 buildings citywide, and owners who don't comply will face hefty fines. The bylaw was inspired by similar measures in New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C.
With the right structures, we see lots of progress being made in 3-year timeframes.
Schneider Electric is a global company that helps with decarbonization. They look at the energy footprint of a building to calculate exactly which retrofits are needed.
The technologies exist, the business models exist, the financing exists to get probably 70% of a good transition done relatively quickly.
The city says roughly 1 in 4 buildings covered by the new bylaw currently exceed the emissions limits, with fines typically ranging from $10,000 to $30,000. But those building owners have a grace period until 2026 before those penalties kick in.
One thing we heard loud and clear is that, real estate owners need help to get this work done. If you're a bigger player.
BC's Industry Association says while the timelines are feasible, it's the cost that can be a big challenge.
So a building owner might look at that and go, well, wow, this building is not worth as much as it was 5 years ago. I'm going to have to spend a significant sum of money to make it comply with these regulations. Maybe it makes more sense for me to redevelop this building and tear it down.
Ultimately, Vancouver's goal is to cut big building emissions in half by 2030 and altogether by 2040. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver. For the second time in 2 months, a vote on restricting cell phone use in schools
has been put off. Tonight, school board trustees in Vancouver were set to discuss a policy that would require kindergarten to grade 7 students to keep phones on silent and out of sight for the entire school day. In the end, that vote was postponed again due to procedural roadblocks. But Chad Pawson has more on the debate.
Vancouver's proposed restrictions on classroom cell phone use, well, they're a response to the province. David Eby says they're needed, and earlier this year promised as much to put them in place by the fall so that children can focus on learning and not be distracted. Parents of school children in Vancouver say they want this, but it could be tricky to get right and then actually enforce.
I think overwhelmingly parents definitely want some restrictions, and that's understandable. It's so easy to lose time in cell phones. We all know that. Adults know that. I think where we get into the problems is understanding that each student's needs are different, and we have to accommodate that.
Digital literacy advocates say full bans won't work.
So having a full-out ban completely, I think, is probably the wrong way to go. Having more restrictions on this is a really good step, and important because for some people, especially those with medical needs, phones are often used now for people with, say, type 2 diabetes.
The VSB board also has to figure out what to do about older grades for students who need their phones for their school work, but also other commitments, not to mention managing their social lives. The VSB board chair says it's looking at learning opportunities.
Our job is to prepare students for life after school as well. And so that's not just restricting something and saying don't do it. It's saying, okay, this is how we're going to use it safely.
The VSB and other school boards have to move fast, though. Even though it's offering help, the province expects restrictions to be in place by this fall. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, protesters this evening gathered at Vancouver's Robson Square after a deadly airstrike in Rafah, the southern city in Gaza. They're rallying against the strike that happened Sunday night, killing at least 45 Palestinians. Israel says it will investigate. But demonstrators here at the rally call it a searing, unacceptable outrage. The strike came less than 3 days after the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to abandon its Rafah offensive. Tenants in Surrey have been rallying against what they call the dem-eviction crisis.
Hey, hey, ho, ho! Hey, hey, ho, ho, ho! Evictions have got to go! Evictions have got to go!
Advocates want the city to bring in anti-displacement protections for renters. Dem-evictions happen when landlords decide to demolish a rental building, forcing out the tenants. Food Banks Canada has given British Columbia a D+ for its efforts to reduce poverty. In its poverty report card, the organization gave BC a near failing grade, the same as last year. It said nearly half of British Columbians report spending upwards of 30% of their income on housing, while more than a quarter are having trouble accessing health care. And more than 1/5 of residents say they are food insecure. But the BC government did receive a B+ grade for its response to the situation. A CBC News investigation has tracked a doctor from Manitoba to BC. Turns out she faked cancer to defraud more than $100,000 from a colleague. As our Carolyn Bargu explains, while she can't practice medicine anymore, she is still allowed to call herself a doctor.
Megan Labine met Monica Kahar in 2018 as medical residents. Labine lived in Thunder Bay, Kahar in Winnipeg, but they forged a long-distance friendship.
She was very genuine.
So when Kahar said she had breast cancer and was struggling financially, Labine agreed to help.
She was in absolute tears, beside herself, that she was being kicked out of her apartment. She had no place to go. Things outstanding.
By 2020, Labine had lent Kahar $160,000. Over time, her friend's story wasn't adding up, and the cancer turned out to be fake.
Kahar was expelled from residency and censured by the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Manitoba, the regulatory body. An investigation found she altered emails and documents and submitted them to the University of Manitoba.
It concluded Kahar fabricated evidence of a non-existent serious medical diagnosis in order to get two colleagues to lend her a substantial amount of money. and that she had shown an unfitness to practice medicine.
I'm not going to lie, at the start I felt absolutely humiliated because you think to yourself, how could I be so stupid as to be led on like this?
Labine has been on a mission for the past 4 years to track Kahar down. A CBC News investigation found Kahar moved to BC in 2021 and started a now-defunct company offering electrical muscle stimulation, advertising herself as an MD. While she is not licensed to practice medicine, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC says she can still call herself a doctor because she has a medical degree.
Well, there's so much health misinformation out there. There's so many fraudsters out there. And I think the public needs some clarity. When someone uses the title doctor, I would like it to mean something.
This expert wants regulators to change the rules so that only licensed doctors can call themselves an MD, or at the very least, people who are not licensed would have to declare that publicly. CBC News reached out to Kahar. She declined an interview for this investigation. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's an unusual program bringing color to the streets of Kamloops on the most unlikely object. We caught up with 2 emerging artists who are touching up the city's dumpsters and finding out why they're taking on such a project.
We're going to do sky and then we're going to do grass. We're here painting a mural on a city dumpster. It's interesting seeing paintings on objects that would normally be mundane. Electric boxes, gray electric boxes that blend in with the cityscape. But now we can put these artworks on them. People can appreciate beauty in more places than before. Art was a healthy way for me to escape from the angst of being a teenager, aging out into adulthood, being stressed. Art is a good escape from trying times of today. It's a good way to bring other people together. When people pass by while we're painting these things, it's always smiles and encouragement, laughs, and that's really, at the end of the day, the whole point of why we do this kind of thing. You're going on your walk, you see a bin that we painted, and you're like, ha, that's a funny caterpillar. It's kind of about marginalized youth, in and out of foster homes, etc. And art was a really therapeutic and positive outlet for me to express myself and kind of create a life for myself. It's really been a life changer for me to be able to create art and get paid for doing something that I love doing. I feel really proud to be able to have a positive impact on the community around me. I hope that by people seeing us doing what we're doing, that it encourages them to use art as a healthy way to cope with stress and possibly even turn it into something that can make other people's lives better as well.
Still ahead, we check out Orofest, a first of its kind street dance festival in the heart of Vancouver. That's next. Welcome back. A first of its kind 4-day street dance festival kicked off in Vancouver this weekend with dance battles and performances by a variety of artists from across Canada. And it still has a few days to go yet. We popped by to learn more about the passion behind the festival. Check it out.
OroFest is a 4-day street dance festival, and we're celebrating Oro Collective's 10th year as a dance collective. Individually, Oro Collective has been active in the street dance community for well over 20 years. And we came together 10 years ago to create Theatre Works, and we thought creating a festival open to the public would be the perfect way to celebrate our 10th year. So that's how we kind of got the idea. Day 2 will be all of our performances. So we have Diamonds in the Rough, we have Tag, which is our youth recipient, and we have Oro Collective and M Queen from Montreal. We'll all be doing like 7 to 20-minute performances.
So having the opportunity to demonstrate that, we're here having a great time, and we're reaching out also to the youth at the same time, and we're in the community and part of the culture we want to share with everyone else.
That's all I need, brother.
And you're looking at a live shot of the rotating W atop Woodward's Plaza. A soggy weekend is making way for a soggy work week as well. Your full forecast is next.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Our Darius Madavi is here with a look at the forecast. And Darius, it was sure a soggy weekend and starting the work week out that way too, looks like.
Yes, that's exactly right. Especially tomorrow, starting overnight tonight, probably after midnight, we're going to get some of that heavier rain. And so after probably 18 hours of that or so, around somewhere between 4 and 7 p.m. tomorrow, the rain should taper off a little bit. The sky should clear a little bit. We get a little bit more sunshine, and then the sun will set, and more showers return on Wednesday for another gray day, and then a little bit of sunshine at the end of the week. But I do want to focus a little bit on the fire danger just really briefly. Parts of the Northeast still experiencing high fire danger, although it has come down in some areas in the extreme north of the province. Overall, conditions aren't looking too bad fire-wise, although we'll be keeping an eye on it because as conditions continue to be a little bit drier in some places, especially up north, at the end of this week, we may see that fire danger come up a little bit. For now, though, thunderstorms like we saw in Fort Nelson earlier today, as long as they come with the water, as well as the lightning, should bring a little bit of relief. Now, tomorrow and tonight, across the southwestern parts of the province, we're going to see that rain move in, clear up pretty early tomorrow on the island, but continue here in Vancouver for quite a while into the afternoon, evening time. Some models saying clearing up by around 3 p.m., others by around 7 p.m., so it really depends. But I think we should be seeing it by around 5 p.m. We should get a little bit of sunshine across most of the region, although if you're a little bit further east or in the valley, a little bit longer in terms of the rain there. If we take a look across the province, we do see plenty of precipitation happening, especially in the interior in terms of those convective showers in the afternoon, but we should still have some sunny mornings for many of those places. In terms of temperatures, we do see those starting to come down a little bit on the coast tomorrow, following in the southern interior on Wednesday, before across the province we start to warm up a little bit on Thursday. In terms of conditions across the province, plenty of activity still, lots of rain, and then we see those thunderstorms that should continue in many of those areas. But here in Vancouver, no lightning expected, just a few more soggy days, as you said, Tanya, before we get a little bit of sunshine and temperatures come up into the weekend.
We will be patient. Thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
That is your late news for this Monday, May 27th. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app or head to cbc.ca/BC. Thanks for being with us. Good night.